everybody. Cinemadness podcast, and we're back on Zoom. My name is Adam. I'm here with Allison.
Hi.
And again with Roman.
Hello.
And we have a special guest tonight. We have the director of the In Search of Darkness movies and the In Search of Tomorrow upcoming documentary, David A. Weiner, as it's listed on his IMDb page.
You can call me David Weiner, or you can just call me David. But hey, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for doing this. I kind of starstruck. it's I know you get it all the time, but
I don't. So as much as you want.
I have been hounding him for over a year now to be on the show because I absolutely am obsessed with the In Search of Darkness movies. If you guys know me, I mean, I'm a huge horror fan. I actually watch those movies once a week, and it's strange. It's strange, and we're so glad we could have you. And I hope we have fun talking about your new project, In Search of Tomorrow, the even longer documentary of 80s sci-fi.
Yeah, slightly longer. Yeah, the In Search of Darkness movies all clock in around 4.5 hours or so. That was the aim for In Search of Tomorrow, but we just needed a little more time, and so with credits, it's going to top off at 5 hours. But I'll say real quickly, just for those of you who are listening out there who don't know anything about these movies, is that they're kind of a deep dive into a decade, and so In Search of Darkness Part 1 and 2 was all about the 80s and horror movies of the 80s, and In Search of Tomorrow is 80s sci-fi movies and genre films. But the idea is that each of these are all structured the same, where you have year by year between 1980 and 1989, you cover a bunch of films. And then in between, you have these sort of larger context chapters and topics about the genre and the sort of overall, pop culture and political and sociological climate around there. And they each have upwards of 50 to 70 people from the era, icons of the era, whether they're in front of the camera, behind the camera, or experts about the era, all having a big fun conversation about it and keeping it entertaining and informative and nostalgic.
Yeah, and that's one thing I really enjoyed was the amount of people that had so many fun memories to talk about and so many good times to share. And was it something that you wanted to do? Was just I have this affinity just for 80s pop culture that I had to make these documentaries just about the 80s? Or was it just because you saw that there was this movement in both sci-fi and horror within the 80s that thought it was interesting to do these documentaries on?
I think seeing that there's an interest definitely helps. But I've always been a guy who has way too much pop culture, factoid, trivia, useless, information just rattling around in my brain. And my adult career goal has always been an outlet to actually get, paid or have an audience, to just sort of do an information dump. And if people care, that's great. If they don't, then it's just like my family at dinner. But you know how it goes. But this all started from Robin Block, who's the executive producer of these films. His company, Creator VC, he did In Search of the Last Action Heroes, then In Search of Darkness, and then after doing action and after doing horror, he's like, sci-fi is the next logical step. He and I would have conversations during In Search of Darkness when he brought me on board to see his vision, on film. And I think he looked over my shoulder and he saw the Enterprise sitting there. And he's just like, I think this guy might be as much of a sci-fi nerd as he is a horror nerd. And so, it's just, we all love these movies so much. And we all love revisiting them. And we all love discovering new, either versions of the movie, editions of the movie, a movie we haven't heard, other projects that our favorite actors in these movies worked on, or the directors or writers. I mean, it's really just kind of a rabbit hole because there are hundreds and hundreds of movies in the 80s, whether they were horror or sci-fi, or just the genre stuff that's a mix that we love. Buckaroo Banzai, for example, behind you is like, a great hybrid film. What is it? I'm not quite sure. Neither is Peter Weller. He's not quite sure, but he's proud of it. So, any excuse to kind of recontextualize these movies in a present day format of discussion and learn a couple new things while you're at it.
Yeah, I thought I was a expert on all things 80s pop culture, and I'm learning new things every watch through. And
Yeah.
I think that's why I love these so much, is because I'm a documentary freak. I love watching making ofs like crazy, and these just speak to me. And I love learning things, and it's a good way to show like friends and family and be like, hey, look at these movies, and see how they're made, see how they talk about them, and it makes you want to watch them more. I mean, when I watched the first In Search of Darkness, I actually jotted down some of the movies. I was like, okay, I need to watch that again. I need to watch that again. Oh, I forgot about that one. All right, let's keep going with these. And that's what made it so great. And
that's kind of one of the offshoots that I never quite really planned on or expected, is that especially around Halloween, but just all time of year, people are using these as like their list. What have I seen?
Yeah.
What haven't I seen? What have I wanted to see? And people often say, thanks for helping curate, all these movies. And for me, it's always been an adventure because I've seen most of these, but I am human. I haven't seen every film that's made. But these are like the perfect excuse to revisit some of the films that I either saw once and see how my mindset has changed so many years later, or an excuse like I've got the best work in the world. It's not the worst work in the world.
Mm-hmm.
My homework is to watch movies, and see how I feel about them then versus now. And like a perfect example is Howard the Duck. I felt a certain way when I first saw Howard the Duck, and I feel a very different way when I think about Howard the Duck now, and it's a very positive one. And I think of a movie, this movie is like a movie in an 80s time capsule. If you could like encapsulate the wildest, weirdest of the 80s in one film that's imperfect but incredibly memorable, you've got Howard the Duck. And perhaps the story behind it is more interesting than the movie itself. But maybe it's still a great movie if it's not quite the sum of its parts, And so here's an excuse to basically sort of do, a discussion about Howard the Duck that maybe people haven't had in a while, which is kind of fun. If not actually having the guy who played Howard the Duck in the movie, Ed Gale, or Phil Tippett, legendary effects and stop motion animator, talking about how things might not have been exactly how they should have been on the set.
speaking of Phil Tippett, I noticed a real difference between this movie and say what was it, the Movies That Made Us on Netflix, when he talked about Jurassic Park. He was very unhappy with that interview, and this
he
one
told me that
you could see it, and in this one it was just like he was so excited to talk about working on Howard the Duck, talk about working on Empire Strikes Back, and he just loved the it was a different feeling with him. And that's kind of the takeaway I got from this, was a lot of people really enjoyed going back to those movies. And I haven't seen a sense of positivity in a documentary than I have in your films.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, it's different. I mean, I'm not quite sure. I love the movies that made us, and I especially love the toys that made us. But they definitely approach things in a different vibe, and I think a lot of their stuff, regardless of how Phil Tippett might have felt about the interview, their stuff is, I think it's definitely designed for a much broader audience. It's like a Netflix audience. Our stuff is really not like theirs isn't, but ours is primed for the people who really love this stuff and really appreciate this stuff. And I think maybe at least what is a benefit to us is that we arrange these things where they come to us or we go to them, but we clear an easy hour, if not an hour and a half, if not 2 hours, if not more,
Okay.
with everybody. And so once they realize, A, we know what we're talking about, B, we're interested
Mhm.
in the breadth of their career, they get comfortable. And you know, I know these movies through and through, and I really live and breathe them as much as you guys do. So I think of the questions that you would probably want to ask, and I ask them, and then I do my best to see if I can integrate it into the conversation.
I'm so happy that you're able to walk us through the process of the interview. I'm just curious when you, because some of the actors and some of the staff that are appearing on your documentary, they they worked on so many different films, which was so very interesting. And that's one thing that was so intriguing to me. Just out of curiosity, did you clear it with them beforehand? Like, did you know that you're going to be talking with the actor who played Coward Duck about the other aspects of his career, or was
Oh
it
yeah,
a little
yeah,
bit
yeah.
more organic?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a definite organic element to it, but I reach out to all these folks and I say, you know, here's the frame. The frame is the
Mhm.
80s, but we could talk about before and we could talk about after. But the focus is going to be this decade, and I'll say, you know, I'll pick out all the genre projects that they worked on. You know, because some
Mm.
of these, like it's like Nancy Allen, you know, not everything was genre film necessarily, you know, but she does have specifically, oh, I, you know, worked on Poltergeist 3, I worked on
Yeah.
Philadelphia Experiment. Of course, I worked on RoboCop. You know, or you know, she was in Carrie, but that was a lot of Brian De Palma stuff, but that was prior to the '80s. But the conversation really kind of flows where I prioritize all the '80s stuff, but I hit the other stuff as well. If not in a reference or a specific, we're going to do a breakdown of that topic. But they kind of know what they're in for. And they just appreciate this opportunity more often than not because a lot of these folks aren't sitting, you know, they're not sitting on the Tonight Show promoting a project anymore. And when they were doing that, they got 5 minutes or 10 minutes where they had a pre-scripted banter, got to show a clip, and that was that. You know, now we get to sit and really do a deep dive. And I could just say, well, you know, on the day that you did this, you know, what were they serving at craft service? What was for lunch that day? You know, you just came off of this. What were your expectations? And you just got off of that and it didn't do well or it did do well. You know, what was your thought process? And, you know, there's 100 different ways you could approach things politely and diplomatically, but get their brains, you know, working. And you come up with these great little anecdotes that they like, oh my God, I haven't thought of this in a long time. Or, oh, I've never really said this. Well, here you go. And they'll tell a tale. And I'm just like, ding, 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 you know, and I put it in.
Real quick, if I may. So
Sure.
how hard is it to edit some of the good, rich stuff? Because I'm certain that there has to be a lot of great stories. Like, how difficult is it to choose what stays and what unfortunately gets cut? That
My
must be difficult.
the pain in my life is seeing and sitting down and having this wonderful anecdote that takes a long time to tell, but it's a rich, like Robert Englund, he kills me because everything he says it's just a
Oh,
mountain of gold, but I
yeah.
have to condense that into something that fits and isn't just stopping, you know, to tell a 5 minute tale. And he'll just get into the way the air smells and the color of the granite on the wall just to set the scene. And then he'll tell all these details and go back and forth in time. And I'm just like, I can't get all this in the story. It's not going to happen. So somehow, somewhere, some way, this is going to be seen and heard. But it's very, very difficult. What I do is I really condense this stuff to the nuggets that I think are unique and original, or have some of the flavor of the enthusiasm of the story with a little element that either supports what they just said or are about to say, or what someone else is saying. I mean, I feel like it's a bit word salad with an answer, but it's just very
Mm.
hard. You just got to condense it the best way possible. And there are some times when I just say, it's just not, it doesn't, it's a great story. Everyone needs to hear it. It's not going to be in this movie. Just
Oof.
because believe it or not, there's no time in a 4.5 to 5 hour film.
Yeah, that's also where I'm trying to put myself in your shoes, where it's it must be so painful where it's like, I could easily make this documentary 12 hours, 8 hours, something to that accordance, just to keep all those wonderful bits. Because I took your documentaries as a celebration, almost like a victory lap, if you will. It's a little bit of a Comic-Con in a set piece. It's a little bit of, just hanging out with friends that you built this relationship with. And it just really is troublesome, just like when you're hanging out with friends and you're trying to cut them off from a story, like Adam's probably trying to do right now. So Adam, please.
Well, you brought up Nancy Allen, and I noticed something while watching all three movies, that they like Nancy Allen, Clancy Brown, Nick Castle, they're all in the same outfits and areas that you interviewed them on. Did you have like this idea to do sci-fi and horror at the same time and eventually just condense them into movies?
Yes and no. You'll notice, Nick Castle is a new interview versus the one that was in Search of Darkness Part 1.
All right, he was in his house in that one.
Yeah, that's all right. But yeah, like Clancy Brown, Nancy Allen. The idea is when, we already know we're going to be doing some of these other films. We're interested in other genres. We're interested even in other decades. But there's only so much that we can tackle in the time that we do have. But there's an element of, you never know when you're going to get these people again. And so it's not like I sit down with Clancy Brown or, Nancy Allen. I don't, I sit down with her. I sat down with her to balance In Search of Darkness Part 2 and In Search of Tomorrow. And when I approached her, I said, we're going to be doing this for both. But we don't have the time and the luxury to do like a costume change or that kind of stuff. Also, the conversation will weave back and forth constantly, especially if you're working kind of in a chronological order with her career, just to help with the mindset, So, Poltergeist 3 and RoboCop are just going to come up right next to each other.
Right.
It's an opportunity that, as an indie filmmaker, that you take advantage with what you've got and you make the best of it. And that's really my answer. I mean, while it would be nice to have the luxury of going back, and I do that with some people, and I continue to do that with some people, whether it's In Search of Darkness 1, 2, 3, or In Search of Tomorrow. But yeah, we're a indie film company. We have limited budget, and it's a combination of budget, but more importantly, when we have them sitting right there, strike while the iron's hot.
Very cool. I also have to mention, you did talk about like not getting the interview while you can. And as a Ghostbuster cosplayer, it was really nice to see Ivan Reitman in Search of Tomorrow, and it's hearing stuff that he's really not really talked about before. It was a really bittersweet moment for us in the Ghostbusters community. So yeah, I thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank Ivan for saying yes. When we reach out to so many of these folks, we cross our fingers and we're optimistic, but we never know when they're going to say yes or no. We shoot for the stars, literally and figuratively. And but at the end of the day, even if they say yes, sometimes there's a scheduling conflict and they just can't show up anymore. But where Ivan Reitman was concerned, about six plus months ago, I went up to his home in Montecito and sat down with him, and he was more than happy to talk about producing Heavy Metal, the movie, and executive producing Space Hunter Adventures in the Forbidden Zone, and how he was the guy behind saying, let's make this in 3D, and then of course Ghostbusters movies, and just talking about a variety of other things. He was in perfect health when I sat down with him, and he was a real pleasant, just thoughtful, wonderful person, just to say yes and invite me over and give me a wonderful interview. And he got a little misty-eyed when he was talking about working with I'm getting now a brain moment here, a senior moment. The guy who is the composer for all of his films.
Oh, Bernstein.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Bernstein.
Yes, it's Elmer Bernstein. Yes, thank you very much. He got misty-eyed when he was talking about Elmer Bernstein, because Elmer Bernstein lived in Montecito as well, and he was the guy who they became very good friends. And he said, "You should come up to this community and live up here." And they were wonderful friends until he passed on, and he got a little misty-eyed talking about him and how important he was in his life. And so, Ivan Reitman's mark on comedy and film and our era of entertainment is indelible. And these movies are more like a time capsule than ever before. I mean, I sat down with Stuart Gordon, and he passed, for In Search of Darkness. I sat down with Larry Cohen.
Yeah.
He passed for In Search of Darkness as well. I hope this has nothing to do with me, but these guys are wonderful and giving of their time, and without being too precious about these movies that I'm making, they really are a time capsule more than ever when you think about it, because a lot of these folks are older. And so have them, sharing their tales and have a lot of enthusiasm about it is an absolute gift to all of us.
Oh, absolutely. And that's another great thing about these movies that you're making. As you said, they are a time capsule, and you can forever show like this was the cool era of movies. And you can pass them down to family and be like, here's a list of things that you should watch. And that's what I do if I actually ever had a family. But I lived through them and I absolutely love them.
Well, tell me, if I could ask you guys, I'll turn the table on you for a minute, because you guys had you guys got to see In Search of Tomorrow early. I'd love to hear what you guys thought about it. What your emotional connection or intellectual response was to this film.
Roman?
I'll go first because
Okay.
I'm completely different from the guys. Sci-fi is not my favorite genre, but I do love 80s. And I'm like, okay, I got this. I'm going to watch this and I'm going to know all the movies and I can remember seeing them. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, don't remember that one. Never saw that one. Nope. Oh, I did see that one, but I didn't like it. Okay, let me learn more about it. Like, as you're talking about Howard the Duck, I grew up hating that movie. I was like, this is horrible. But after I'm watching more about this in the documentary, I'm like, okay, I understand a little bit more. I think I'll give it another chance, maybe watch it with my 7-year-old.
I don't advise that, but yes.
Well, but there were a bunch of movies that, brought that nostalgia back for me. I'm a huge Back to the Future fan. That just, that's something that I share with my dad. So anytime I can get more information about Back to the Future, I just gobble it up. Short Circuit, I loved seeing that. But most importantly was Flight of the Navigator. So much for showing me what he looks like now. I felt old, but I was like, man, I had the biggest crush on him growing up. Love that movie. So although I'm not, I can't say that, oh, my favorite is RoboCop, or I love the 84 Dune. I do remember these films. I think that this documentary helped me have a better appreciation for a lot of the films that I don't think I enjoyed growing up, because I just saw it just one dimension. I didn't open my mind to it. But I really enjoyed the stuff about the music. Like when Ivan was talking about the composer and the music in Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters is something I share with my son. We both love that movie, so that kind of got me teary-eyed. And just all the set designs and the creature design. So that part, I loved that part. So every time you would focus on one of the movies and all the other movie posters were in the background, I was like, oh, look at all those movies I've never heard of or seen. So it can be like a list for people of what they need to check off their sci-fi 80s bucket list.
Very cool. Thank you.
Roman?
Yeah, that's what's wonderful. Yeah, Joey Kramer, I think he grew up, he's a good looking adult now.
He is, so cute.
It was very cool to have him. One of the things that was really kind of special to me for this film was getting a bunch of folks who were former child stars or the children of icons. So, the former child stars like, Joey Kramer or Carrie Henn, who was, Newt in Aliens, or, Corey D. Williams, the son of Billy D. Williams.
Yeah.
His insight or Stan Winston's son, Matt Winston, who has wonderful tales, and even Adam Nimoy, the son of Leonard Nimoy, just and his insight about his dad's process. That stuff was real priceless to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing about the when you showed the kids that of the stars and stuff, that really got me too. Like Winston and Nimoy, I was like, this is really cool that they get to talk about their dads, like they're standing right next to them, and it was kind of emotional with that. But Joey Kramer, man, he knows a lot about what he wasn't in too.
Yeah, well, I loved how he said that he saw Return of the Jedi 23 times in the theater.
That's right.
Yeah, well, he was our age when in the 80s, give or take. And he's like anyone else. He's a fan of this stuff,
One thing that I thought was very interesting, without going too deep, but how heavily involved Billy D. Williams' son was in. Of course, after seeing the documentary, I, of course, naturally looked up his IMDb credits, because I'm like, oh my heavens, okay, all right, cool, that is really awesome. But
and an accomplished musician too. If I could interject real quick, some of the stuff that didn't quite make the cut is that when he was on the set of Return of the Jedi, first as a stand-in, then as a stunt double, then as one of the characters. He'd sit there with his pal and they'd jam in their hotel room. And because they were in the middle of nowhere, Arizona, a lot of people, including the cast, they'd crowd into their room and they'd all party in their room because they'd be jamming and having a concert. How cool is that?
Yeah,
so
cool.
it was kind of like Caddyshack, kind of, right?
Exactly. It's very much.
Give or take a little bit.
Blue Harvest.
Terror beyond imagination.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, no, it was very fascinating. My take on your documentaries, I'll be honest with you, is it's a great excuse for parents like Allison and I to slow down and to really, because at first, I'm not going to lie, for nearly 5 hours to ask of me at first, I'm thinking, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? But here's what was brilliant. It's like having a conversation, because you and I, we all four of us could have a 5-hour conversation about the same subjects and all be okay and just really enrich ourselves, because we're really celebrating what we love about the films. And to me, it was, quite honestly, and I'm not trying to earn brownie points with you, the quickest 5 hours of my life. I'm not kidding. Like I put it on and I'm taking notes and I'm being active and paying attention. And before you know it, I'm just caught up in nostalgia, on this roller coaster of nostalgia, where I remember seeing that film with my brother. Backstory on me is I was a military brat, so I didn't have a hometown. I was 2 years here, 1 year here, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of times these movies, those were like my aunts and uncles, if you will. So when I got to see these films and highlight some of these gems that I forgot about, or things that I saw on HBO or Showtime, at 3 PM with my brother, and he and I would reenact some of the action scenes, that was a homecoming in some ways. And being a military brat, seeing some of the action films, not to give away too much, but some of the action films that you have highlighted there, it was just so much fun. It was, again, it was just such a wonderful tapestry of nostalgia and emotions and fun. It reminds me very much of just hanging out with you or hanging out with the staff, and it's like, hey, dude, check out, this is really cool. And then you and I have a conversation about it. It's like, did you know Billy D. Williams kid, jammed out? It's like, are you serious? Dude.
Well, thank you. I have to say the brownie points wouldn't go to me. They'd go to my editor, Samuel Way. Because he's
Samuel Way, by the way. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, no, please shout it out to Samuel Way. He's in the UK. He is the guy who has the magic touch. I mean, we work on this very intently together, and I script these things line by line by line. But then when it comes to assembling it with all the clips, making it just fly, we have Paul Conshake, who does all the motion graphics. He's in Berlin. We have this international team.
Yeah.
They are just great, and they really know how to keep the recipe going really fast.
And before we get to Adam's take, because he's just super excited, and I'm so happy to see that from him. But I just gotta wonder, how did you pick the films that you did? Was it a situation where you're spitballing, and especially with the international staff, did you guys like have like a powwow or some sort of Zoom meeting and say, hey, look, we want to cover this? Was there an argument over what not to cover? I mean, if you don't mind, just
no. There's never. Well, first of all, we don't argue about it. I mean, I know what you mean. Like we don't argue, but we don't really. No. We don't really argue about it. It kind of starts with, first of all, what is defined as sci-fi, at least for this film. That's really where it all started for me, because I'm like, well, are we going like real narrow, where it's got to be like aliens in outer space and that's it? Or can we talk about, how science changes things? Or can we talk about apocalyptic landscapes and storytelling? Can we talk about the what if genre, present day, but what if, it's the end of the world in war games, that kind of stuff like that. How does that, and does it all fit? Then once you have this massive list, I go year by year, what were all the movies that came out? And then it's literally a mathematical equation, or mathemagical, I like that. Mathematical equation where it's like, how much can I fit in each year with the topics in between, the chapters in between, and not be going 8 to 10 hours. You just can't fit it all. So that's where the big painful part is, because in addition to the anecdotes and the stories and the wonderful things, I start with more movies than I end up with. So we cut segments for movies that ultimately don't make the cut in the film, and ideally we'll do a part 2 and you'll get to see them there. But it's very nice because Robin Block has the utmost confidence in me and my vision. And he might have some favorites and say, you got to have this movie, you got to have that movie, or try and get this talent, or try and get that talent. But at the end of the day, he trusts me to make the choices, and the difficult choices of what gets cut out, even if it's really well known, to just find a balance of what's familiar, what's eclectic, what's unfamiliar, what's I hear it, even though no one's talking to me right now. Why isn't this here? How could you not do this? Because this is so obvious. Or I saw that poster. Why didn't you go there? And trust me, I'm like everyone else. I'm a total completist, and I know what is not there. But you know what? That's the beauty of these movies, is that we can continue on with the structure and these conversations and just keep on going.
So are you saying there's going to be a part 2?
That's up to the audience. I'd love to do a part 2. I already have material for part 2. It's just a question of, do I get the green light from the audience, who, your word of mouth. The idea here is to talk about the movie and get people aware of it. But the idea is also to kind of break through, to people like Allison, who are not such huge sci-fi nerds necessarily. And nerd is a good word. But but just love the movies and the time and the era of the 80s, and love Ghostbusters and Back to the Future and Short Circuit, but then an E.T., but then some of these other movies are like, yeah, that was never for me. But they could see how it all kind of fits in the big sort of grand jigsaw puzzle tale.
Yeah, and that was a big difference that I saw in between In Search of Tomorrow and the In Search of Darkness movies. The In Search of Darkness movies are very niche for the audience, and In Search of Tomorrow, the movies weren't just sci-fi, they were just 80s. There was just a lot of sci-fi elements in 80s movies, right? And that was much broader, and it's an easier movie to recommend. In fact, I would go backwards in chronological order. I'd be like, watch In Search of Tomorrow first, and then go watch In Search of Darkness, and to dig deeper into it. And I absolutely love that. And also the positivity in the interviews, compared to, there wasn't any negativity in Search of Darkness, but it was just a different feel. Like In Search of Darkness had this rock and roll feel to it, as In Search of Tomorrow had this, inclusionary feel, like we're all here, happy to talk about this, and
Yeah.
that overall feeling of positivity, and the talk of sci-fi being, no matter how dark and dystopian the stories are, there's always hope. That's always a good feeling. I think Will Wheaton said that in the movie,
Yeah.
and I really grabbed onto that, and that's why I just really enjoyed this movie more. Not, I couldn't say more than the others, but it's there. It's more to me of an 80s nostalgia than a sci-fi nostalgia movie. And I loved every moment of it. I've watched it 1.5 times now.
Oh, good.
Oh, when
Yeah,
he first saw, sorry, David, when he first saw the film, he was blowing up our team chat. We have a team chat to share ideas. He was absolutely gushing like a girl that just saw the Jonas Brothers. It was absolutely, hey, just guys, just watch it as soon as you can. Let's talk about it. Oh, and it was just, he's pretty much your hype man, sincerely. And even before this, when we were doing, when we do podcasts on horror films, he goes, you gotta watch In Search of Darkness. No, you got to. And he paraphrases. So I'm so happy that he gets the chance to share his admiration for your work, and just you sharing your work to people like Allison, like myself, and of course continue to share your work with Adam. It was just so humbling, and it's so intimate and sweet, to be completely blunt with you, and it was outstanding. Adam, we've all shared our thoughts, so Adam, why don't you go ahead and take the rest of the 3 hours to go ahead and share your thoughts on the film. Allison, I'll go ahead and pick you up for lunch.
I've pretty much said all I could about this movie. I mean, this movie is fantastic. It's probably the best of the 3 documentaries that you've done so far. I also enjoyed In Search of Last Action Hero, but you didn't direct that one. So, but you were a producer, weren't you, though?
Yeah, I was a producer on that, but yeah, Oliver Harper, that's his film, and he directed that and did such a wonderful job with it. And that was the floodgates, right, that broke open to get this whole series going. Courtesy, of course, from the brain of Robin Bloch. I mean, let's take a moment to celebrate Robin Bloch, because he's so wonderful to work with, at least just from a personal standpoint, because he's as much of a geek as we all are about these films, but he loves to surround himself with a team that's incredibly capable and resourceful and very small, and we get a lot done. We're a small company and we do big things and big documentaries, but he's the biggest cheerleader, and he's one of those guys who once he finds people that he is confident in, and I've said this before, is that he really just gives us the blank canvas. He'll sort of be in there in the beginning saying, it's got to have this. I definitely think this is important. I see how we're going to market it. I see how we're going to sell it to people. Here's what I'm envisioning. And then I work with him to put together an outline. We all go over it together, and everyone just sort of says, what about this? Should we add that? Is this qualify? That kind of stuff. And then it's like, that's it. I kind of have my marching orders, and I get to kind of, do my own thing. And that's why I am such a happy camper, because I get to do the stuff that I want. And I don't have a studio. I don't have lots of executives and cooks in the kitchen saying it's got to be this, and it's got to be that, and it can't be this, and it can't be that. You really have the bigger the project in terms of the scope and the people involved, the tighter the manacles are. It really, it can be very restricting. And so I don't know who else is making, 5-hour movies, and, although tip of the hat to, Crystal Lake Memories and Never Sleep Again, the horror documentaries on Elm Street and Friday the 13th, that an audience would be happily willing to sit down for hours and just do a deep dive on a subject. And so we're just different in that we're covering a whole decade.
Yeah, those movies are also on my rotation. I'm a sucker for overlong documentaries, usually based on horror. Like I'll watch those. I'll watch the Alien Legacy, go through all four Alien movies, and the I think it was the 25 years of horror for Halloween. It's just only horror that gets these long documentaries. I would totally watch one on like the original Star Trek films or Empire of Dreams, that kind of thing, you know. But yeah, your movies might pave a way for that, you know. I mean, I would love to see other pop culture stuff get like long documentaries.
I would posit that what makes these watchable, and I'm not going to claim credit that, you know, I did it and it's wonderful. I think what makes them so engaging to make people want to sit for 5 hours is the fact that you have so many different things that you're covering. So you get you get a good chunk of it. And even me, when I'm watching these, I'm like, can't we have a little more time? Okay, we're on to the next, you know? Oh, okay, now I'm really thinking about this. Now I'm really into it. All right, I want to know more. Oh, wait, got it, on to the next. And even if you don't like it, you know, a couple minutes later, on to the next. And so while it is a interwoven tale that all sort of connects, you're constantly moving on. It's like channel surfing where everything is the exact genre that you want and the exact decade you want, but you keep on moving on. And so it's constantly engaging. And the only time you want to leave is like, you know, to sleep or take a break or go to the bathroom, I suppose, you know, or eat.
Yeah. And I wanted to say the actor spotlight in Search of Darkness 2 was a great addition. You see, you just go from the first one and just talk about the movies and get a little bit in the music, but then you get into the actors talking about their careers and stuff. And even Tom Savini talking about how he got started. That was a great addition. It was a great evolution. And I'm kind of excited to see what 3 is going to hold.
Yeah, in Search of Darkness 3. Me too. We're working on it. And what was wonderful about those spotlights, at least from a storytelling standpoint, was in Search of Darkness 1, we had an established, you know, we did this movie, we covered this, we covered that, but we didn't always have the talent that was involved, you know? And so now part 2, I've got the talent, yet I didn't want to redo certain things. You know, I couldn't go back to Creepshow 1. I couldn't go back to Dressed to Kill. You know, I couldn't go back to the first Nightmare on Elm Street necessarily. But now I've got Robert Englund, and I've got, you know, Nancy Ellen, and I've got, you know, Tom Savini. I have Linnea Quigley now, you know, but I did Return of the Living Dead. So in order to be able to touch on their careers as a retrospective, you could also cheat a little bit and go to the earlier years before the 80s. You could cheat a little bit and go after if you want, but the idea is you can sort of cover things from their point of view. And still it all makes sense, and it doesn't feel like I'm retreading on old ground.
May I ask if there's any plans to do any In Search of Comedy series from like the 80s and things like that, without giving too much away?
Well, we have a couple things lined up right now. We love all different sorts of genres. And comedy is there's plenty of people who love to laugh and love comedies, you know. But I think a lot of this genre stuff is a little stickier, is a little more, you know. So like when I say sticky, like, you know, like the web term, you want to stick around more, you know.
Okay, gotcha.
And so the idea is after this, we're contemplating. It's all what comes next, but we want to do In Search of Darkness 90s. We want to do In Search of Darkness 70s, you know.
Oh man, Adam just got a huge erection, right?
That's why the camera stops here.
We're starting on, you know, we're developing In Search of Legends, which is 80s fantasy, you know, and more installments. You know, this will be it for In Search of Darkness with the 80s, but there are more decades to tackle. Robin has FPS, first person shooter, which is about, you know, that, you know, the video game era and FPS games, but he wants to go broader than that, like In Search of Pixels, and talk about a broader scope of, you know, the whole video game revolution. And so we definitely have plenty of things up our sleeve, but it's the amount
Okay.
of time that these things take. It's quite a process, but the most important thing is that it's all involving you guys. It's the fan support, the fan crowdfunding, the fan involvement, the community involvement, and what makes our projects, A, I think very special, and B, really important to us, is that we can bounce off of you guys what you want to see and what you're excited about and what you really want to, encounter when you see these films. And by having a dialogue, and finding out exactly what the audience wants, we can create like the ultimate documentary or project that is something that you guys really would like to see. There's always going to be that one thing missing, that, you can't accommodate all the people all the time, but collectively, the enthusiasm for In Search of Darkness 3 was just overpowering. I thought after 2 we were done. And then, you go to Letterboxd and so many people are saying, I can watch this 24/7 and bring on 3 before we even announced it. And I'm like, who's getting paid to write all these reviews? I couldn't believe it.
See, Adam, he read your stuff. You're welcome.
So it's humbling and it's encouraging, and we have lots planned.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Before we let you go, we want to talk about. I wanted to bring up that this has been a pretty big milestone as a Kickstarter too. In Search of Tomorrow. Did it make it? I heard it broke records. Is that true?
Yeah, it broke records. I believe it was the second highest growing documentary, highest grossing documentary on Kickstarter. I think we just got pushed back to 3 because I believe Star Trek Voyager documentary pushed us down in terms of how much it made. But I think Alex Winter's Zappa was the only one that had made more than us, and no one was more surprised than us that it did as well as it did. And and kudos to Alex Winter for making, being so successful with Zappa, because he's the best.
Yeah.
He's been such a supportive presence in these films, and he's gung-ho and game to just sit and talk about all this stuff. He's such a articulate and intelligent and just genuinely nice guy. It's a treat to have him in my movies, and so I'm very thankful. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, he's very knowledgeable about a lot of the things that that's brought up upon him. You still have time to back the project. Is that true?
Yeah. So currently, the In Search of Tomorrow is done. It's completely done, and we are having a sale where you can get it now between now and March 27th. And the reason why we have the March 27th cutoff is that if you do it before March 27th, you can get your name in the end credits, which is super cool. And then you get a package where you can get, posters and, DVD, Blu-ray, slipcover, stickers, a variety of different things. And you could immortalize yourself as part of this. And, then all your friends could be jealous when they didn't get something before March 27th, and they're going to want to borrow your copy.
Well, you hear that?
So everyone goes to adscifidoc.com, or our socials are at adscifidoc on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. And yeah, get there, tell your friends and support the cause for a 5-hour documentary on your childhood, pretty much.
Before we finally say goodbye, we have to do our things we do with our guests. We have 3 questions for you.
Okay.
We usually do 6, but it was kind of like last minute thing, so we're going to give you 3 personal questions, not super personal, but
Okay.
not related.
Okay.
Question number 1: what is your favorite sandwich?
My favorite sandwich is probably a Reuben.
That is the correct answer. That is the absolute correct answer.
No one ever asked me, so thank you for asking. But yeah, that must be it, because that's the one thing that pops directly into my brain. I'm a turkey Reuben guy.
Okay.
So I try and keep it slightly healthier, but yeah, it's got like the Thousand Island dressing, the Russian dressing, and it's got the Swiss cheese and the turkey and the rye, and it's, I'm gonna leave and have dinner right now.
Well, in my defense, you didn't do In Search of Sandwiches, so I wasn't able to refresh myself.
You're the
All
first
right,
to pitch
so-
that, so I'm gonna have to add that to the list.
There you go.
There you go.
Second question: what is the best smell?
The best smell is the nostalgic kind that takes you back many years to a certain place and a certain time where it just surprises you. And next thing you know, you are 30 years or your childhood back, and you're immediately just happy because that's what you smell.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I don't think that could be a better answer,
No.
especially for this episode.
Well, exactly, right? Because I traffic in nostalgia. But it's like, yeah, smell, they say, is the most nostalgic sense. It's the most powerful one, the five senses in terms of taking your brain elsewhere.
It's a fantastic answer to such a mundane question.
Yeah.
And the final question: what is your movie snack of choice?
I'm a popcorn guy through and through. Although what I like to do is, these days, because I have not been have not been at a theater for way too long due to pandemic kind of things. So what I do is although I'd like to air pop my own popcorn, sometimes it's a little time consuming, and I have a 10-year-old who's impatient. So I've become much more of a microwave popper these days. But what I do, my secret thing that makes me happy, is I do half of the microwave popcorn, just the butter popcorn, and then the other half is white cheddar smart food. And I mix the two together, so it's all mixed and nice and warm, and that's my happy place.
That sounds
That
very
sounds good.
warm and happy.
2 food questions right around dinner. What are you doing tonight?
Well, we all want to thank you for doing this episode. It's been very, very awesome, and it's just awesome that you've come to do this. Guys, do you have anything else to say before I sign off?
No, David, thank you very much for taking time out of your day to talk with us and to your fans. We are looking forward to it. I can't tell you, when we posted on our social media that we were getting an opportunity to talk with you, a lot of people were like, "Oh wow, you're getting an opportunity to watch that. How lucky are you?" And it really stimulated such a wonderful response, and it really just goes to show what a intimate spot that these films that you're doing, they're really finding an intimate spot in everyone's lives. And thank you very much to you, Mr. Block, and all the staff that worked so hard to produce that. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you very much. We do work very hard. I do nothing. I sip martinis, but the guys, but everyone around me, from the development of these movies to the production, to the post-production, to the marketing, to the manufacturing and distributing these movies, we do it all ourselves somehow. I don't know how we do it, but the fact that we have connected with the community to be so supportive of what we do and have such faith that we're going to do a decent job. People will say if it's half as good as In Search of Darkness, then it's got to be great. And that warms my heart that you guys really care about this stuff. And so your support is very important and means a lot to me. And I appreciate you guys having me on.
Well, thank you.
Thank
I
you.
just keep doing these, and we'll keep praising you. And if you stop, we'll keep praising you for the movies that you did do.
Yeah, I might draft off of them for a couple of years, and then I'll come back and I'll do In Search of Sandwiches for you.
That's
I like
awesome.
it.
All right, David, thanks for joining us. Everybody remember to like and subscribe to the show. You can follow us on all social media as Cinemadness Podcast. Follow David here. He has a fantastically funny new TikTok that he's got going.
Yes. I put my toe into TikTok because at this I've avoided it as long as I could, and the request was deafening from no one. I wanted to check it out.
Well, it's very entertaining. So check it out. And remember, go to 80scifidoc.com and get yourself in the credits. And that's it. Allison, you want to take us out?
Yeah, thank you so much. You guys have a good night. Bye.
Take good care, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.